Hello fight fans, I'm Mike of Fights of Friends, and if you're looking for betting odds and predictions on UFC on ESPN 3, Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos, you're probably thinking, my God, I hope I came to the right place. Please don't let this be clickbait. Guys, it's not clickbait. Everybody, if you could please just hit that thumbs up. And I know everybody does this. They tell you, oh, subscribe to my channel. You're going to get a lot of value. And then they just inundate you with a bunch of garbage. Guys, I waste a lot of my time, spend a lot of my time. So you don't have to waste that time and you can spend it with your family. And hopefully, so when you go to talk about these fights with your friends, you don't look like an absolute idiot. So hopefully we can make that happen today. This fight, I'm going to break down the top 3 fights. This is not a bad card at all. It's a UFC on ESPN 3. Obviously, it costs a lot of money to get Junior Dos Santos and Francis Ngannou on a card. I mean, those are 2 of the very top paid guys in the entire UFC. So this is a very top heavy card. So I'm going to break down the first 3. I'm going to tell you what I am doing on bets, what I would do, and what I actually am doing. Damien Maia versus Anthony Rocco Martin. Let's jump right into that one. Who is Anthony Rocco Martin? What do you need to know about him? He's a plus 150 underdog. It's good to bet on underdogs, right, Mike? That's how you make money. You bet on underdogs, like James Buster Douglas, because that happens like once in every 20 years. Guys, it's okay to bet on favorites sometimes, and I'm actually going to advise you to bet on favorites probably a lot more often than you have in the past. And I hope I win you some money. Let's check out Anthony Rocco Martin. If you bet $100 on Anthony Rocco Martin, if he wins, you're going to get $150. And let me tell you what's going to happen in reality if you bet $100 on Anthony Rocco Martin. Your $100 is going to go up into a ball of flames because you didn't listen to me and it's a completely idiotic bet. Let me tell you why. 4-fight win streak for Rocco Martin. Right, last time he lost was back in September 2017. It was a split decision to a good Canadian fighter, Olivier Aubin Mercier. Right, let's talk about fight IQ though, guys. Let's go back here for just a second. I'm going to back up to Anthony's record. 16-4, that's a very good record. He's got 9 submissions over his career. He's went to decision 8 times. He's won 6 of those. All good things, right? It's been submitted, though, twice by guys that weren't the greatest submission artists. He's got 1 knockout in his entire career against Ryan LaFleur not that long ago. And his other 9 finishes are submissions. Like I said, he's got age on his side, though. He's 29 years old, and a lot of people are probably going to look at this and say, Mike, Damien Maia is on the wrong side of 40 years old. And he is. That's certainly true. He's not on the right side of it. He's 40. He's 41 years old. He's 26-9. He's a minus 190 favorite coming into this. So you're going to have to put down $190 just to make $100. Now you're probably really confused as to why I'm telling you to bet on Damien Maia. Like, Mike, why would I put down $100 or $190 to make $100? That sounds stupid. You're not just going to make $100. You're going to have $290. So if you think about this like in stock percentages, it's not a sure bet. But I think it's a very, very, very good bet. And if you can turn $190 into $290 in one day and make it easier than this, please email me and tell me how you're going to do this, because I have no idea how you're going to accomplish that. Let's look at Damien Maia's last fights. And I think this is the reason that he's not as big a favorite as I believe he should be. Besides the fact he's 41 years old, he's lost 3 of his last 5 fights. Now let's talk about strength of competition, though. Look at those 3 losses. Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman. If you're going 1 to 10, those guys are 8s, 9s, and 10s. Rocco, the only time Rocco's seen an 8, 9, or 10 is when he snuck into the Miss American Beauty pageant. It's the only time. Guy just submitted Lyman Good, so he's good for the submission still at 41 years old. And if you think Rocco's going to knock him out, how come Jorge Masvidal couldn't knock him out? How come Tyron Woodley couldn't knock him out? Kamaru Usman couldn't finish him. Colby Covington couldn't finish him. This guy's been fighting the cream of the crop at 40 years old. And that's why I'm taking Damien Maia to win this. And I would just bet straight. If you want to look at some odds, though, for him by submission, I'll leave that up to you. I definitely don't think that's out of the question. I'm very conservative with my bets. I like to find as for sure thing as possible. But I certainly wouldn't criticize you for betting on him by submission. Let's go to the co-main event of the evening. Jussier Formiga versus Joseph Benavidez. These guys may be fighting for the future of the 125-pound division, right? That's what we keep hearing. And a lot of these guys have been cut, so that's why we keep thinking and hearing that when they lose. Jussier Formiga, 23-5. Joseph Benavidez, 27-5. On paper, this seems like a lock for Benavidez from a lot of people. And I'm sure that's what a lot of the professionals out there are saying right now. I haven't listened to anybody else's breakdowns, so I like to do my own first. But Jussier Formiga, he's not the biggest underdog in this. You're only going to have to put in $100, you're going to get 140 back. And I think there's a chance you could do that. Most people probably disagree with me, but let's go into Formiga's last 5 fights. He's got 1 loss. He lost to Ray Borg. He's on a 4-fight win streak since then. Submitted Sasaki first round. Won an impressive unanimous decision over Figueiredo his last fight, and he won a dominating decision win over Sergio Pettis. That's very important to me, especially that Pettis fight. And let me talk about why when I go into Joseph Benavidez right now. He's a minus 177 favorite, and a lot of people, when they first seen those odds, they probably are like, wow, I need to jump on that, because why in the world is a guy who just beat Henry Cejudo not very long ago only a minus 177? This guy has the split decision win against Henry Cejudo, and a lot of people forget this has been several years back. It's been like 7 years back, but he took Demetrius Johnson to a split decision, lost a split decision to him. And then you go and you look at Joseph Benavidez's record, and you find out something that I don't like. Dana White says never leave it to the judges. Joseph Benavidez seems to vehemently disagree with Dana White. He likes to leave it to the judges a lot. I'm not saying he's not trying to finish fights, but he's seen a lot of judges in his career. Got a knockout over Alex Perez a couple fights ago, first round. Then, he got the unanimous decision in his last fight over Dustin Ortiz. I have no idea who Dustin Ortiz is. And if I don't know who he is, you probably don't need to be either, because he's probably not even on the UFC roster anymore, being that he's at 125 pounds. Then you look at these split decisions and you see, oh, look, like opponent, Formiga dominates Sergio Pettis, and Benavidez leaves it to the judges. Look at this, another split decision. He loses the split decision, Demetrius Johnson. I mean, that's almost a win. And then he gets a win by split decision over Henry Cejudo. Last guy to beat him, only guy ever to beat him besides Demetrius Johnson. And, of course, Henry Cejudo's even much better since then. Then he loses that split decision to Sergio Pettis. And I see something besides the fact that Joseph Benavidez allows a lot of fights to go to decision. I see a pattern of playing up or down to his opponent. He played up to Demetrius Johnson, pushed him, close to the limit, played up to Henry Cejudo, squeaked by him. Then he goes up against Sergio Pettis. I remember watching that fight thinking, I think he needs to do a little bit more to make sure he gets this. I actually thought he won the fight. But he didn't do that extra bit. He didn't go that extra mile like Formiga did, his opponent. And for that, he was punished. He trusts those judges. He went to the split decision. He loses to Sergio Pettis. The fact that Benavidez trusts these judges so much means I'm not going to trust him with my money. I'm going to stay away from this bet. If you're going to make me bet, if you're going to make me pick and say, Mike, somebody's going to give you $1,000, but you have to bet it on one of these fighters, I'm going to pick Benavidez. Yes, I lean largely towards Benavidez, but just he scares me with how much he trusts these judges and how much he plays to his opponents. So I'm going to leave that one on the board, but if you're looking for something to make you lean one way or the other, that's my opinion. I lean towards Benavidez, but not enough to put my money there. And now we go into the main event of this card. Like I said, it's a good card, very top-heavy card, though. And, of course, this is where the big money's being spent. The knockout artists, Junior Dos Santos and Francis Ngannou. And I spent a lot of time breaking this down. I watched a lot of these guys' last fights. Francis Ngannou more so after the Stipe and Derek Lewis fight, because it seems like he's done something that is almost unheard of in sports. He went to that brink of doubting himself, even admitted it, and then came back and seemed to get that confidence back. That's not something that's common in sports. But first, let's talk about Junior Dos Santos. He is a 2-1 favorite, and I'm going to admit the first time that I seen that he was coming in around 2-1 favorite, I'm like, man, Junior Dos Santos is a killer. He's still only 35 years old. He's not that old, right? He's got 15 knockouts in his 21 wins. He's former UFC heavyweight champion. He's had some knockouts over some incredible fighters. And guys, he's been pretty good as of lately. Lately, he's on a 3-fight winning streak. He beat Blagoy Ivanov by unanimous decision. Then he came back and knocked out Derek Lewis, though. And then he just had that incredible battle with Tai Tuivasa. So that's his last 3 fights. And that Tai Tuivasa fight, he got hit. He came back. It was impressive. The Derek Lewis fight, he landed that spinning kick to the body in the first round. I think about his kickboxing, all the things he's done over his career, and my first thought was, man, maybe JDS is a more rounded striker. So I started looking at what have you done for me lately. I started looking at his last 3 fights. Well, the Blagoy Ivanov fight, both guys were extremely tentative. I was at that fight live. It was in Boise. I watched it live. Then, of course, I went back and I watched it on tape, too. Don't do that to yourself. It's not a very entertaining fight. But it didn't tell us a whole lot, except for he couldn't knock Blagoy Ivanov out, and Blagoy ate some good shots, and JDS ate a couple shots in that one. Now against Derek Lewis, against Tai Tuivasa, first, right after that, he ate some big shots. It looked like he might be out. Ate some big leg kicks from Tai Tuivasa. Also, Tai Tuivasa, I was a little surprised. Tuivasa beat him in the leg kick department. He beat him in basically everything except for the striking. And then Junior Dos Santos did something that if he's going to win this fight, I think this is how he's going to do it. is when he got Tuivasa to the ground. He immediately moved to mount. Junior Dos Santos is a jiu-jitsu black belt, even though Francis Ngannou this week has questioned that, which is hilarious because Junior Dos Santos' jiu-jitsu coach is an absolute stud. But he gets on top. He moves, to mount immediately and grounds and pounds Tuivasa out. Tuivasa just had no answer for it. He looked literally like a fish out of water. Ground and pounded him out easily once he got to mount position. The Derek Lewis fight, they cracked each other quite a few times. Dos Santos got hit with several big right hands in that fight, in that first round. Towards the end of the first round, if you don't remember it, Junior Dos Santos hit Lewis with a spin kick to the body, a beautiful spin kick to the body. Seemed to knock the wind out of him. We find out later Derek Lewis was nursing a few injuries going into that fight. He may have aggravated that back injury, I'm guessing, possibly with that body shot too. But it was a great body shot. I'm not going to say it was all that. But Derek Lewis and his trainer also said later that Lewis came in with a torn Achilles. I mean, he was in rough shape when he came in there. Dos Santos took care of business. But in his last two fights, he's been cracked. He's been hurt. And this is not very deep into fights. And guys have jumped on him early and found success by jumping on him early. And who has success by jumping on guys early but Francis Ngannou? Minus 250 favorite coming into this, which means you're going to have to put down $2.50 to the dollar to get your money back. So you put down $500 to win $200. You leave with $700. Okay, but you're risking $500. So that's a pretty big risk for me to ask you to take. I get that. This guy's in sensational shape, especially for his last fight. I mean, I swear at 6'4", he weighed in at 254 in his last fight. If 218 was the optimal weight for Mike Tyson, which he was really only about 5'9", for those that don't know. If 218 to 220 was the optimal weight for Mike Tyson, around 255 is the optimal weight for Francis Ngannou because he looked absolutely terrifying. And I don't think he had to cut any weight. He didn't look like he really had to cut any weight. He looked very lean and muscular. He was very quick. His reflexes were on. And if you're trying to think about ways that Junior Dos Santos is going to win that fight, when Ngannou went into his fight with Curtis Blades 2 fights back, actually a 2-1 underdog, even though he'd beaten Blades once. The first fight was either after 2 or 3 rounds. It ended up being stopped by the doctor by a cut. A lot of people thought it was a fluke. He came in this time and he murked Curtis Blades 45 seconds into the first round. And then 26 seconds for Cain Velasquez. He's knocked out Alistair Overeem first round very quickly. He's knocked out a ton of super powerful guys that have actually knocked out Junior Dos Santos. Andrei Arlovsky not so long ago knocked out Junior Dos Santos, and Francis murked him in the first round. I think this is a bad matchup for JDS. I really do. Now that I've studied this, I've seen what he's looked like in these last fights. Even though he's won his last 3, he's been so susceptible in that first round. And in Francis Ngannou, I mean, you've heard people say it over and over and over again, use this word to describe Francis Ngannou, but I believe it's the right word, and that's absolutely terrifying. So a Junior Dos Santos, 35 years old, with a ton of miles on him, a Francis Ngannou that likes to jump on people early, a Junior Dos Santos that's been hit repeatedly early, even in the fights that he's won recently. The guy that Francis has knocked out quickly have knocked out Junior Dos Santos. I have to lean very, very strongly towards Ngannou, and this is what I'm actually doing for this one. This is my bet. I'll tell you what I'm doing. And you do what you do. Don't blame this on me if I'm wrong. But I think I'm good on this. I think I'm right. I'm actually parlaying Ngannou. I'm parlaying two favorites. So I'm parlaying Francis Ngannou, and I'm parlaying Damien Maia. And I think I've made a very good case through watching a ton of freaking tape, especially on JDS and Francis, as to why I think both these guys are going to win. You're going to barely double your money, though. And I'll show you my pick. I'm putting down, I believe it's $210, because it's a month's worth of revenue for the channel. That's what I've been doing. It's $210 to win. I believe it was $448. So I'm putting around around $210 to bring home $250. So would win about $240. So a little more than doubling my money. I want to know what you guys think, though. What are your guys' bets out there? What are your guys' thoughts on these fights? Do you agree with what I say? Do you disagree? I hope some of that was helpful. And I hope you join us Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific, because my good friend and fellow YouTuber and also a great MMA mind commentator, Wyatt Matheson, is going to be co-commentating with me, and we're going to do an interactive fight companion for UFC on ESPN 3. Guys, if you have plans, cancel your plans. You cannot miss this fight. This is Junior Dos Santos and Francis Ngannou, two of the most incredible strikers in the history of combat sports. What are you thinking? Call in sick, your dog died, cancel your date, leave your kids with a babysitter. If you're a fight fan, you don't want to miss this, guys. Everybody, please hit that like button if you like what I do. Make sure and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to ring that bell so you're notified whenever I post a new video or go live, like basically every major UFC, Bellator, and boxing event, and this Saturday at 6 p.m. Until next time, guys, as always, I love you, I respect you, and I'll see you fine asses later.